Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Elko, Texas A&M, continuing to work through fall camp, and I've been very vocal over the last couple of weeks and months. I'm a believer in Texas A&M going into 2025, and many of y'all have already heard my 30-second elevator pitch. If you're new, I'm gonna give it real dang quick. That is, look, I believe in Texas A&M not necessarily because it's the most talented Texas A&M team we have seen on paper, but I believe in it because there's a little bit more of a clear identity to this football team. You go back to the Jimbo Fisher years. Look, there were some dang good looking rosters that Texas A&M would go trot out every single fall. There was never an identity. You never had a feel of, hey, how is Texas A&M going to win football games every single Saturday? To this football team, the identity is very clear. I mean, this is one of the more imposing offensive lines that you see in the entire country, with Marcel Reed at quarterback, with a deep stable of running back rooms and an offensive coordinator that I think schemes up a run game just about as good as anybody in the country. And with Mike Elko being your head coach, we expect this defense to slowly get better as Mike Elko kind of digs his teeth into this program. There's a very clear recipe. We are going to run the piss out of the football, and we're going to play really good defense. You couldn't say that about a lot of Jimbo Fisher teams. There'd be a ton of blue chip talent on those football teams. There'd be a ton of individual names that we like. Hey, what's the identity at football team? Never really seemed to be one. That's what makes me excited. That's what has me believing in Texas A&M going into 2025. And then I'm doing some fall camp reading this afternoon. And I get up there and was like, I'm doing all this talk about Texas A&M not being as talented in years past, and say, hey, hold up. You could make a very strong argument that this Texas A&M team is much more talented than the team that we saw in 2024 that made some noise throughout the 2024 year. I mean, you go out and make a few more plays in the 2024 year, the way we're talking about Texas A&M in that 2024 season, probably a little bit different. What I want to do with this episode, now I'm fired up to do this, is we'll work in some of the fall camp buzz, and we'll talk about some freshmen that are standing out. We'll talk about some players that seem to be taking that step. Let's go run this roster down and go a position group by position group and talk about, hey, do we think this team is more talented than it was in 2024? Because the more you start getting into this roster, the more you say, hey, this team in 2025 has more talent than what we saw in 2024. So now we're talking about a talented team, but we're also talking about a team that has some identity. That's what fires me up the most. I'm excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, to the Texas A&M fans, appreciate you guys, man. It's been really since Mike Elko has taken this job, it's been so fun talking about this football team, not only in terms of what's happening on the field, but how Mike Elko is building this roster, recruiting the high school ranks, using the portal. I've had such a good time talking this program. The amount of support y'all show means the world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And I would love to hear from the Texas A&M fans. Look, yes or no question. I don't need a welcome long explanations. I don't need it though. Yes or no? Do we think Texas A&M has a more talented roster in 2025 than did in 2024? Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, let's just start at the quarterback position, right? I expect Marcel Reed to be a better quarterback than he was last year. I expect Marcel Reed to be a better fit in the Coach Colin Klein offense than what we saw of Connor Wigman. Look, I think you're crazy if you don't think Marcel Reed gets better as a quarterback going into 2025. He's got a year of experience under his belt. He's gone through spring practice and fall camp as the quarterback one, which was not the case 12 months ago. He's got better talent around him, and he's got an offensive line that is extremely experienced. There is so much momentum pushing Marcel Reed to be a better quarterback in 2025. I feel very confident that Marcel Reed's going to be better in 2025. Then you look at the running back room and say you get Ruben Owens back. Look, Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens has the potential to be one of the more dynamic running back duos that you see in the entire country. It's clearly a better unit, right? Le'Veon Moss back healthy, coming back in 2025. Then you introduce Ruben Owens, which, Look, that if you had maybe a complaint about what Le'Veon Moss does, is hey, we want a little bit more home run hitting ability. Well, gosh darn it, Ruben Owens kind of balances this room out. I mean, the combination of Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens, that combination you didn't have last year, it's going to be a better running back room. Now you're talking about a wide receiver room. This is probably the most improved position group on this football team, period, full stop. I mean, go back to last year. Number one, the wide receiver room is just not that good, right? I mean, when you compare it to other wide receiver rooms that we see in this conference, it was nowhere near close to being a top end SEC wide receiver room. But the second thing I would add there is it didn't really fit what Coach Colin Klein wants to do. Like there's a strong emphasis on the quick game, allowing Marcel Reed to get the football out of his hands quickly to his playmakers in space. You didn't really have those kind of wide receivers. I mean, go back. Who was your wide receiver one last year? Was Noah Thomas. He is a vertical kind of guy. He runs longer developing routes that work the deeper third portion of the field. That's not a knock on Noah Thomas. It's just you were trying to run an offense that leaned into some quick game with a wide receiver one that wants to work vertically down the field. That's where he thrives. Again, not a shot at Noah Thomas. It just wasn't all that good of a fit. You look at the wide receivers that Texas A&M has going into 2025. Your new wide receiver one is Casey Concepcion. I couldn't think of a better fit for this Texas A&M offense than a kid in KC who is, I think, one of the most dynamic pass catchers in the country when he has the football in his hands. He knows how to separate early in his route trees, and he knows how to be a playmaker with the ball. Then you add a guy like Mario Craver who can add some verticality to this offense. The story of fall camp has to be Ashton Bethel Roman. There's a lot of year two wide receivers that have the opportunity to take a monster step in the right direction. I always thought it was going to be Terry Bussey. I was a monster fan, and I still am a monster fan of what Terry Bussey can be going into year two, getting acclimated to the wide receiver or wide receiver position, I should say. Like Ashton Bethel Roman, he ain't no slouch. Like there was a reason he was a top 150 kid coming out of high school as well. Track and field guy that has the ability to win vertically down the field with that long speed, but also is a difference maker with the football in his hands. And so now you kind of have a guy in Ashton Bethel Roman who seems to be emerging as one of the difference makers in this wide receiver room. You have a freshman in Jerome Miles where you can't teach 6'3", 215 pounds with a 10-3 in the 100-meter dash. He's going to provide value vertically down the field. You have a wide receiver room that is not only significantly more talented, but it's a way better fit for what Texas A&M wants to do. And then you look at the offensive line and say, hey, we're just running this sucker back. And with the development that we saw from this unit with Adam Cushing, why can't we expect it to get better going into 2025? I think that sounds like a fair expectation. I don't know how much better it's going to get, but I think it's a fair expectation that this group gets better going into 2025. So you're looking at the offensive side of the football and say, as much as I'm getting up here and running my mouth about maybe not as talented, but better identity, you start getting nitty gritty with this roster and say, look, this offense is better at every single position. Hey, we forgot a position. What about the tight end position, which was surprisingly kind of a non-factor year one for Coach Colin Klein? I don't think he had the difference makers at tight end. Now, do you have those difference makers in 2025? I'm not sure. But what I like about this tight end room, it's really diverse. It's got a lot of different skill sets that you can utilize in different ways, right? You go to the transfer portal and bring in 3 tight ends. Nate Borkisher from Nebraska, Micah Riley from Auburn. They're your inline run blocking tight ends. That's kind of why we brought those 2 cats into the program. And then you bring Amari Niblack. Say, okay, kind of a wild card, not necessarily sure what to expect, but we know because we've seen it going back to his time at Alabama, the juice that this kid can provide as a pass catching tight end. And then you got a guy like Theo getting another year of football under his belt, which is important because he's rather new to the sport. Expect him to get better. I wonder if Texas A&M can hit, especially with a guy like Amari. Like, what if he hits? What if he provides the pass catching juice at the tight end position that Texas A&M lacked desperately in 2024? It's a really important, like Colin Klein, if he has good tight ends, he's going to use them. Can Amari be that guy? I think unquestionably, though, it's a better unit than what you had in 2024. You got more diverse skill sets. You have more bodies you trust. I think you're better at every single position on the offensive side of the football, whether it's from transfer portal additions, whether it's from player development. I think you're going to be better at all. Now, the only going to the defensive side of the football, the only position where I think on paper this team takes a step back is on the defensive line, which kind of brings us up to our next fall camp stud, and that is true freshman Marco Jones. The conversation for Texas A&M's defensive line is, can we translate the disruption we had last year to legitimate production? What I mean by that is, look, it was clear in certain games Texas A&M was winning the battle along the defensive line. Right? They were moving guys back, they were getting off blocks, they were winning in their pass rush situations, but it didn't translate as much as you wanted it to negative plays. Like, I don't think this Texas A&M defense was nearly as good as they wanted to be against the run, and I don't think they were nearly as good as they wanted to be in terms of sack numbers. Can we just be more productive? And look, it sounds like Texas A&M loves what they have with Deion Hayes. It sounds like they love what they have in true freshman Marco Jones, who, look, I thought he was by far the best football player on the field in the spring game. So I didn't need much buzz from him to believe in him as a freshman. Sounds like they like what they're getting from TJ Searcy. Can you get a step from a guy like Rylan Kennedy going into year 3? I don't know if I'm going to go as far to say it's a better unit because you lost 3 NFL draft picks that all went in the top 75 NFL draft picks. I don't think it's crazy to say it could be more productive as a whole than it was last year. Linebackers, just player development, all these linebackers going into year 2 with what Mike Elko wants to do. That matters. I think that matters a lot more than we probably think. I mean, you have a new defensive coordinator, new defensive play caller coming in. The language is a little bit different. The scheme is a little bit different. You know, at times you saw some poor run fits. You saw some breakdowns at the linebacker position. That's only going to get cleaned up with both Torrey and York and Scooby Williams going into year 2 with this defense. And not to mention, Scooby Williams was like really banged up last year. I forget the exact injury. I think it was like a torn labrum or something. He was like not 100% in 2024. So what does it look like now that he's healthy in 2025? Secondary. Very similar conversation. I think you make some here are the 3 names that excite me the most. Number 1, you got a bunch of young safeties that are going into the next year within this program. Dalton Brooks, Marcus Ratcliffe are the 2 that I think are like have the chance to be some of the better safeties in the conference. Going into year 2 under Mike Elko, are they more comfortable with their jobs in the 2025 year? You bring in Julian Humphrey, who sounds like he's a hit. Like, it sounds like Texas A&M's very happy what they have with Julian Humphrey on one side, Will Lee on the other, with Des Ricks being that cornerback 3. The name to know here, Tyreek Chappelle and Jordan Shaw. Tyreek Chappelle went down with a season-ending injury week 2, I believe. Jordan Shaw comes in from Washington. Like, the nickel cornerback spot last year was not good. It just was. I mean, Jaden Hill last year, 73% completion percentage when he was targeted, 18% missed tackle rate. He wasn't very good playing that position. I think you should be comfortably upgraded at the nickel corner spot as well. And so I'm suddenly looking at this team and say, as much as I love the identity of this football team more than I like the talent, position group by position group, this is a more talented team, I think, than what we had in 2024. Now you combine that with year 2 under Mike Elko and say, hey, this team can surprise a lot of people going into 2025. That's my elevator pitch on Texas A&M. I mean, I wasn't even planning on doing this kind of episode. I was going to do a generic fall camp, kind of run down some names that were firing me up a little bit. The more I was digging in, the more I was like, hey, maybe I got to backtrack what I said about this team not being as talented as years past, because I think this team has a chance to have 10+ NFL draft picks over the next 8 months. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.